Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. It's your favorite mentally unstable Subway worker, Jared from Subway, back at it again to drop What If Deku Had the Omnitrix? Probably the most perfect combination of series and abilities. I mean, let's be honest, the ability to change into aliens in the My Hero Academia universe doesn't even sound bizarre. I mean, look at Mina. In fact, I'm shocked that concept still doesn't exist. So today I decided that I was going to be changing all that and make sure our boy Deku gets justice in his own show. So if you're excited for all that, Detroit, smash the like button, seeing as if you don't, I will eat your leftovers. Joke aside, it took me quite a while to make this video. In fact, I even had to enlist some help from the Cook Squad, but that's neither here nor there. That said, enjoy. Once upon a time, in a land very, very far away, a lot different than the one that we live on, there was a boy with green hair named Izuku Midoriya, and he just so happened to be on a camping trip with his family. That's what this whole story is going to be about. Deku is going to be out there on a family trip with his family. They're going to be cooking some marshmallows because you already know they're making some s'mores. And in the midst of that, the fire started dimming down. So Hiyashi and Izuku were both sent by Inko to go looking for some firewood, and you guessed it, Deku's gonna be 10 years old. So they're out there looking for some firewood, right? Hiyashi ends up going to the other side of the forest, telling Deku to not stray too far, as suddenly, Deku walking would actually end up sort of losing himself. In the midst of this, Deku would begin calling out for his father, being like, Dad, where are you? And Deku can't exactly find him. Luckily for him though, this is actually going to be a good thing, because Deku, while wandering through the forest, he's going to see this gigantic asteroid looking thing shooting at him at such speeds that Deku would begin just running. Deku starts running as fast as he possibly could, and eventually the thing would hit the ground as Deku would jump, landing just far enough from it so that he didn't get injured. He just got a couple of scuff marks from landing on the ground, things that I'm pretty sure we all can relate to from our times as children, right? That said, Deku after this, he would end up making his way towards the direction of the crash landed area, where he would end up seeing this weird cocoon thing. He walks closer and ends up falling into it because the surface there wasn't so solid, and when Deku falls there, he sees this watch. Deku would look at it and be like, what's this watch doing here? Thinking to himself that it's probably interesting or something, as the watch would actually end up jumping onto Deku's arm and it would latch onto it. Deku from here would start freaking out, being like, get off me, as suddenly he realizes, wait, this thing isn't doing anything to me. And so Deku would get out of that hole, as eventually his father would actually end up running over towards Deku saying, Deku, are you okay? Having seen the explosion, worried that Deku might have been there. Or being like, Izuku, are you okay? As Deku would look towards the direction of his dad and be like, yeah, I'm fine. Look what I found, Dad. As Hiyashi would look at Deku and be like, oh, that's a cool watch. Suddenly he would actually try to look at it by taking it off of Deku's hand, but the second that he would try to pry it off, Deku's dad would be sent flying back by a burst of energy that would shoot from the watch, since you can't exactly forcibly take this watch off of Deku. And once this would happen, Deku would rush over to his dad, being like, Dad, are you okay? As Hiyashi would say, he's fine. As Deku begins to mess around with the watch a little bit, until suddenly it begins glowing. Deku starts realizing that this watch has a bunch of different characters on it, and eventually realizes one thing: the watch would have sort of ended up popping up. So Deku, in an attempt to fix that, taps on the watch, pushing it back down, as in that moment, Deku would transform into his first alien transformation, this being Diamond Head, right? Now, before I continue on forward with like everything crazy that ends up going down because Deku turns into Diamond Head, I first want to talk about what I'm going to be doing when it comes to what aliens Deku actually has access to, because as I'm pretty sure we're all aware of, not Deku, but Ben 10's normal alien transformations consist of Wild Mutt, Forearms, Gray Matter, XLR8, Upgrade, Diamond Head, Ripjaw, Stinkfly, Ghost Freak, and Heat Blast. But there was two aliens that honestly I knew I wasn't even going to be using a lot in this series, so I decided that instead of just not using these aliens and pretty much just not taking advantage of the cool characters they are, I would just replace them with two other characters that aren't too OP, but fit in with the first 10 aliens levels of power that Deku's only going to be having access to. Because one, I don't want to deal with the headache of having to go with a list of like over 100 different alien transformations, if not more. But I also don't want Deku to have access to Alien X, because that's going to be way too busted. And in a story where I actually want to have a story make sense, I didn't really want to include that into the story. Plus, let's be honest, Deku's not going to be needing Alien X to beat All For One, or Shigaraki for that fact. So instead, the two aliens that are actually going to be changed are going to be what's it called? Sorry, I forgot for a second. Okay, so the two villains that we're actually are villains. So the two aliens we're going to be changing is going to be Wild Mutt and Stinkfly. One, Wild Mutt is just like a little a crazy like dog animal thing, and I don't even want Deku to transform into that. Second, Stinkfly. Stinkfly is just ugly, horrible character design. I personally don't like it, so I'm going to be changing those two for Cannonball and Ditto. Two very small changes, but changes nonetheless, so I figured I would tell you guys about them. That said, as soon as Deku would transform into an alien, it would be discovered that Deku would be Diamond Head. Now, Izuku's father standing there would be like, "What happened?" As Deku would say, "What happened to me? I'm huge!" As Deku would just stand there, right? And he looks at his arms, realizing that he has crystal for arms now. As Sasaki would say, "You activated your quirk." And because of the fact that quirks are not exactly the craziest thing in the universe, in My Hero Academia, they're not sitting there freaking out going, "What's going on?" Instead, they look at it as a blessing, and they just like Deku literally starts crying as Diamond Head. I don't know how else to put it, but instead of tears, little pieces of crystal are falling from his face, as Heihachi would look at him and be so proud of him. As they walk back towards Inko, with Heihachi telling Deku not to de-transform, and Deku would arrive there, as Inko would see Heihachi walking back with this gigantic looking man covered in crystals, as she wonders if it's some sort of mutant type quirk. But as they get closer and closer, it becomes very apparent that that's not just a diamond character person. That's Izuku. Inko would rush over to him being so excited, being like, "Deku, you got your quirk," or Izuku, sorry. As, you know, Deku would look at her and be like, "Yeah, look, I have these abilities," sticking out his hands as he shoots multiple crystals towards a certain direction, and just sort of just being really, really, really cool. In this moment, they all just celebrate, and suddenly you could hear this noise come from the direction of where the transformation took place, as Deku would de-transform back into his normal state, and Inko Hisashi would be like, "Does that watch have anything to do with it?" As they end up realizing that Deku didn't exactly develop a quirk, but something else entirely, with them saying that if anything, in this world, it's probably best to just call it a quirk. As they would end up telling Deku to just say it's a quirk, and for the next 2 days, since they were on a 3-day camping trip, they decide that they're going to be helping their awesome child learn to use these powers, seeing as Hisashi only has these next couple of days with his boy before he has to go back to work. And so that's exactly what they would do. Deku would end up finding out about the other transformations that he has access to, such as Ripjaw, someone he can use for water, Cannonball with a really funny cool ability, Ghost Freak, Heat Blast, Upgrade, XLR8, Gray Matter, Forearms, and Ditto. So after Deku would realize all these abilities and characters that he's able to transform into, they would wonder if there's more, but realize that there really isn't. But that doesn't matter, considering the fact that each of them have innately very powerful abilities. And one thing that they also would have realized is that Deku has some sort of time limit with them. Each one, when he transforms, from what they gathered, is only about 10 minutes. And they found out that most of their abilities are actually very unique and different from one another. Obviously, Forearms is super strength, Ditto can transform into multiple creatures, Gray Matter has insane intelligence as well as a small frame to help him around dodging attacks and stuff, XLR8 has super speed, Upgrade, they really weren't able to figure out what he does, considering the fact that, oh no, that's not true, he could jump onto their like van and like make it super cool. So yeah, they figured out that he can upgrade technology. Diamond Head, pretty clear. Ripjaws, he would use him in the lake, and Cannonball, you know, he can turn into a cannonball. What more is there to it? Ghost Freak and Heat Blast, which obviously has the ability of fire, pyrokinesis, which obviously Hisashi was able to help Izuku with, seeing as he has a like fire breathing quirk, right? And over the edge of everything, Deku basically had the best camping trip of his life. Deku was having such a good time and nothing could even be going wrong at this moment. Deku was so excited because not only did he finally get a quirk, but this means that he and Bakugo can go back to being friends. Bakugo will stop bullying him. In fact, everyone will stop bullying him. Deku was so excited to go back to school, and well, the first thing that Deku would do when he's in class is tell Bakugo that he finally got a quirk. As Bakugo would tell him that there's no way he got a quirk for real, with Deku saying, yeah, he'll even show him during recess. As Bakugo laughs at him and tells him, sure Deku, just tell me where you want to meet me. As Deku would tell Bakugo to go somewhere where the teachers won't be at, considering that he doesn't exactly want to get sent home for using his quirk. And so Deku would end up making his way towards that direction as he was just about to turn the corner to go show Bakugo what was going on, but Deku would overhear Bakugo and a bunch of people talking, as Bakugo would tell them that he's about to beat Deku up for wasting his time and that Deku's a quirkless loser. Even if he ends up developing a quirk, he's still going to be nothing but a useless Deku, he would say. And with Izuku hearing that before he turned the corner, he would just pause as he would just have everything that he thought was about to change. Like, it's almost as if time stops and Deku realizes, like, Bakugo isn't my friend. Even if I had a quirk, he wouldn't care. Even if my quirk was better, he wouldn't care. He just isn't a good friend, Deku would realize. And he would realize that Bakugo isn't a hero. He's a monster. Deku, in tears, would end up not turning the corner and walking away. As eventually, by the time of the next period would start, Bakugo would end up walking over towards Deku's desk, exploding the papers that are on Deku's desk, as he would tell him why he kept them waiting. And Deku would come up with some lies saying that he had really bad stomach problems, that he was at the nurse's office, with Bakugo saying not to do it again, asking him, so what exactly is your quirk, Deku? As Deku would look at Bakugo and say, well, honestly, I thought I unlocked one, but it turns out it was just bad gas. As Bakugo and everybody around him would just start dying of laughter. And Deku would just sort of begin getting picked on even more. As from here, everybody would eventually forget everything. And Deku, over the following next 4 years, would have just enough time to train, get accustomed to the watch's abilities, the Omnitrix, and would learn how to manage each one of his alien transformations powers to their absolute maximum capabilities. Deku is not going to be having the ultimate versions yet. Or, I mean, maybe he'll be able to get some sort of ultimate watch or version or an upgrade or something like that, but I haven't really thought ahead too much, so we'll see when we get there. But for now, rest assured, no ultimate versions for now. And Deku just is going to be having the basic 10 aliens that I already covered. So that's all that Deku has access to. And with that, I really don't think I have anything else to cover. So, okay. Here's what I want to have happen. We're going to be having a bit of a huge time skip in which obviously Deku would train, and the thing that I would definitely have happen is he's definitely going to be training at Dagobah Beach just because it's a place with a bunch of trash that Deku can use as target practice when using Diamond Head. He can use Cannonball to clear out the trash. He can use Ditto to help him pick up trash, Forearm to pick up all the heavy stuff, XLR8 he can run around the sea in the sand, he can use Upgrade to jump on all the wasted garbage that's there, Heat Blast to destroy it all, Gray Matter to make little gadgets and tinker around with stuff, and Rip Jaws he can use it in the ocean. So basically, Dagobah Beach was the perfect training ground for all 10 of his abilities, which would lead Deku to becoming a very, very powerful individual who would actually hide the fact that he even has a quirk, or not even a quirk. He would just hide the fact that he has powers from everybody, just like Ben 10 does in the original story of Ben 10. So yeah. With that happening, Deku would still get bullied every now and then by Bakugo and his goons, but everybody else would sort of just leave Deku alone, since Deku, once he gains these powers, would gain confidence, and with confidence would come Deku not exactly letting himself get pushed around as much. He would end up getting a couple of friends, not being shy around girls, and just becoming a normal kid, honestly. Deku was just Deku, but cooler and more confident, and obviously he cannot wait to upshow Bakugo one day, but he thinks that revenge is better served sweet. So Deku would wait, like I said, and so what would pretty much end up going down is we're going to time skip straight up to the day of the sludge villain incident. And the reason we're doing that is because two major events are going to be going down this day. One, Deku was going to be shouted out or called out for actually trying to make it into UA. And because of that, Bakugo, like in the original, would still get mad at Izuku, tell him that he's never going to be nothing, he's never going to amount to anything, and he should just jump off a bridge or something like that, right? As Deku would look at Bakugo in slight anger, as Bakugo would blast an explosion and Deku would begin cowering in fear, pretending that he's nothing but a weakling, he can't do anything. As once Bakugo and his goons would leave the room, Deku would start laughing as he would say, "I can't wait for the day that I pay him back double all the embarrassment and humiliation." As Deku would grab his things and checking his watch, he would realize, "Oh, I'm late." As he would make his way towards the direction of the place where he would get captured by the sludge monster, and on his way there, Deku would be none the wiser, as the sludge villain would finally end up jumping on Deku, and Deku would actually get completely caught off guard by the sludge villain, as the sludge villain begins to suffocate Deku, meaning that he is in danger. And what would the Omnitrix do? It snaps him out of it, as instantly Deku would transform into Heat Blast, as shooting flames, just like shooting flames off of his body, he would actually cause the sludge villain's temperature to rise up so rapidly fast that it begins boiling, as it eventually begins popping as like bubbles, and the sludge villain would just jump off of Deku, as suddenly Deku would shoot reams of flames at the direction of the sludge villain, taking it out immediately, as suddenly, you guessed it, All Might would end up jumping in out of nowhere, being like, "Ha ha ha, I am here?" Seeing the sludge villain taken out and somebody with a flame quirk there, All Might would immediately assume the worst, saying, "Wait right there, villain," as he throws a Texas Smash at the direction of Heat Blast, or Deku, but Deku would hold his hands out, being like, "Wait, I'm not a..." As All Might would rush in towards the direction of Deku, throwing a punch, as Deku would fly out of the way before then shooting flames at All Might. As All Might would smile and say, "Huh, you villain, I didn't think you'd be so strong." And Deku in this moment would begin flying into the air, being like, "Wait, stop, it's not what it looks like." As All Might jumps up into the air and throws a punch, which would send air flying at the direction of Deku. As Deku would dodge it before then telling All Might that he's not a villain. As All Might would say, "Are you," like he would literally just ask, he would ask him, he's like, "What are you then?" With Deku saying, I'm a kid using my quirk." As All Might would be like, "Oh," jumping back down to the ground, with Deku landing right beside All Might and telling him that he was trying to tell him that the whole time, before then like just finally like breaking out of that concentrated state he's in and being like, "But it is an honor to meet you, All Might." As All Might would look at Deku and be like, "Well, it's an honor, it's an honor," but he'd be like, "It's nice to meet you too, young man. You have quite a powerful quirk. I can't believe you were able to fight me, even if it was not too serious, for as long as we did." With Deku saying, "Yeah, I guess I do have a powerful quirk." With All Might like not realizing that more time had passed, as eventually Deku would, or sorry, not Deku, but All Might would be like, but like shooting out blood from his mouth, realizing that he ran out of time, something that Deku knows all too well, as literally 10 seconds after that, with Deku would be like, "What?" As suddenly beep 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 beep, Deku would transform into a kid, as Deku would sit there looking at All Might and he would say, "Are you really All Might?" getting on the defensive, with All Might saying, "Kid, it's me, trust me." Going on to explain the injury, showing Deku and being like, "Look, all this happened, yada yada yada," and Deku would say, "Oh, well, sorry for doubting you," as eventually he would help All Might gather the sludge, get his notebook signed by All Might, and making his way home, since All Might training Deku really isn't going to be doing anything for him this time around. And so, Deku would sort of just make his way home, where for the training for the 10 months, Deku would mainly focus on his physical body just like he would in the original, seeing as Deku did realize one major weakness to his abilities, or quirk, as he likes to call it. The fact that he only has 10 minutes of a time limit, and once that runs out, he has to wait another 10 minutes before he can even transform into something else. And in a world where people have quirks, what's going to happen if one day he fights and it takes way longer than 10 minutes, which probably won't happen, but what if it does? What if reinforcements arrive? How's Deku going to handle that? So Deku would think to himself, I need to have some way to face off against villains without using my quirk. So for the following 10 months, while Deku would obviously work on his alien transformations and work on one specific thing, which he's been wanting to change for such a long time, which is being able to turn off the transformation before the 10 minutes are up. Meaning, let's say he's in his forearm state, he does what it needs to do, he can turn it off. That way, like say Inko needs help lifting the fridge. Deku at one time had to transform into forearms just to help her. And right after that, he was stuck as forearms, meaning he wasn't even able to get into his room because he was too big to fit. And so that's the one thing that Deku has been working on. And finally, Deku was able to learn a way to actually turn it off before the 10 minutes were over, which I'm not sure is something that Ben 10 actually has access to, but this isn't exactly something that's going to make Deku OP. He's just going to be able to turn it off and on during the course of the 10 minutes, and then obviously have to wait another 10 minutes to turn it to transform into another alien, which, you know, it's not adding to his power, it's just more of a convenience-based add-on that I'm giving him. So I don't think anybody's going to be too upset at me for this, but yeah, that's another change that I'm going to be giving him. And over the course of the 10 months, he's going to be working on boxing, kickboxing, and wrestling, since those are basically just 3 of the things that he mainly is going to be needing, right? So he would work on his hand-to-hand combat, and Deku would actually be very physically fit. He's going to be about what Bakugo is in terms of physical like strength or Kirishima levels. Like he's going to look like Kirishima-ish, you know, nothing too crazy. And with that happening, I think that that's really all that we can really cover for the 10 months of training. Obviously, Deku's going to be having all the abilities of these aliens and stuff like that, and he's going to put them to great use. Oh, yeah, something else that I forgot to mention. Deku, seeing as he does have the ability to transform into gray matter, is actually going to be very smart with it, because Ben 10, he sort of never really used into his full capabilities. Deku will. In a world where support items are a big common thing, Deku would not shy away from creating support items. Heck, he would not shy away from even trying to tinker with his watch and maybe try to upgrade it in some way, shape, or form. But ultimately, he wasn't able to do much when it comes to that aspect. He's getting close to a breakthrough though, but nothing yet. But he is able to create a couple of support items that will help him in case of a crisis. Say he ever runs out of his 10-minute transformation, Deku will have access to help out in some way, shape, or form. So yeah, now we're going to jump into the UA entrance exam, right? And during the UA entrance exam, things are actually going to be kind of interesting because, I mean, we have 10 alien forms to pick from. Which one do you think I'm actually going to be choosing for the entrance exam? Comment down below. If you're right, I'm going to leave a like on the video, but don't cheat. You got to comment now. All right. You got to comment it now, because I'm pretty sure some of you guys are going to comment, think something, but be wrong. But trust, the alien that he's going to transform into might shock you. Anyways, what's going to happen is Deku's going to make his way towards the UA entrance exam area, and on his way there, he would actually notice Bakugo, who walks right past him, shoulder checking him, telling Deku to have luck and try not to die. As Deku would make his way inside, taking the written exam, as he would finally make his way outside, where Deku would just do nothing but prepare and get ready for this whole exam thing to start. Deku wondering what exactly is going to happen and what alien he should best use, thinking about it for a second, as suddenly it would hit Deku. Why am I thinking so hard about this? If I'm gonna go face off against robots, why didn't this come to my mind instantly? As he just basically face palms himself and would go, obviously I need to use upgrade. And Deku would wait for the exact moment that the proctor would tell them that they can start, aka President Mike, as Deku would say, the second he tells me to go, I'm gonna transform into upgrade and take out as many villains as I can. It's perfect. It's 10 minutes, right? With that, I should be able to take out multiple robots and pass no problem. Deku would be so happy at the fact that this is how the exam works. And so the second that President Mike would say, "What are you waiting for? Go, go, go!" and everybody would finally start making their way towards the robots, Deku instantly would say, "It's time," as he smacks his watch. And I was about to say it's morphin time, but no, yeah, Deku would transform into upgrade as he immediately rushes towards one of the robots, which would actually be a one-pointer. Latching onto it, he would then upgrade the robot just enough for him to rush towards more robots, as he would then beat them up and destroy them easily. until eventually he would run into a 3-pointer robot and Deku would instantly jump off of the 1-pointer that he was already on, latching onto the 3-pointer as he would upgrade it, and it would become a tank of a robot. Deku would then go around defeating multiple robots, and there would even be a point in time where some students would actually think that he is an enemy robot, but Deku would let them know that he's not one of them. It's just his quirk. So they would stop trying to attack him, and Deku would go on to destroy multiple villains, actually getting a grand total of 83 robot points, using the quirk upgrade to just latch onto different robots whenever anything went wrong or whenever he felt like it. Eventually though, it would be about the 8-minute mark as Deku would destroy multiple villains at this point, as finally the 0-pointer would be unveiled. Just like in the original, everybody begins to run away as fast as they can because this thing is giant and none of them are trying to get squashed by it. And Deku seeing this would be like, I gotta help. No. Deku seeing the 0-pointer would get so excited at the prospect of being able to upgrade that thing. So he immediately rushes towards it, but then he would hear the sounds of a girl screaming. And this girl would obviously be Uraraka. Turning to see that she's in danger, he would instantly rush at her as he would immediately grab the pile of rubble on top of her and throw it off of her. As Uraraka would say, "Look out!" seeing the 0-pointer was getting closer and closer, but it'd be in that moment that Deku would cause the robot that he was already in to self-destruct, as he would then latch onto the 0-pointer and completely cover it, as Deku would take full control of the 0-pointer's body before it could actually crush Uraraka, as he would make it basically shut itself down and just stand there, with Deku finally taking off the whole upgrade form as the timer would finally expire, and Deku would land on the ground as he would basically tell Uraraka, or no, actually what would be pretty funny is if Deku was to actually run out of time right as that would happen, you know what I mean, where Deku had taken over the 0-pointer and he was like, "This is so cool," as suddenly beep 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 beep, and he transformed out of the state, right? As he's like, "Oh no." And he was free falling until Uraraka would actually slap him in the face, and Deku would land thanking her, as she would be like, "No, thank," as she vomits everywhere. And Deku would just scratch the back of his head as he laughs, and ultimately he would make his way home. Now, here's where another interesting thing is going to happen, because it's not like nothing happens during this course of time. Do you guys remember in the anime what actually happens after Deku took the entrance exam and actually passed? The middle school that Deku was a part of, actually ended up having Deku and Bakugo both take pictures and stuff and be honored for the fact that they made it into UA, and that's still going to be happening in this timeline, right? So what's going to happen is right after this would go down, Bakugo would end up cornering Deku into an alleyway where he would ask Deku how in the world he passed the entrance exam, asking him if he cheated or something, what he did, as Deku would act as if he's so fearful of Bakugo, being like, "Bakugo, please, I didn't." As finally Bakugo would threaten him with blowing him to smithereens, right? As Deku would say, "Bakugo, I don't know." As Deku would just go dead silent, with Bakugo saying, "Huh? Tell me, how'd you pass the exam, you Deku?" As Deku would look at Bakugo and say, "Bakugo, it's quite simple. I'm not as weak as you thought," as he would transform instantly into XLR8 and run right behind Bakugo. As Bakugo turns behind him to see him, and he would say, "What? You had a quirk this whole time, Deku?" As Izuku would look at Bakugo and say, "I did. In fact, I've been stronger than you since we were 10 years old." As Bakugo would look at Deku and just be like, "There's no way you're stronger than me," throwing an explosion at his direction, which Deku would easily dodge, as Bakugo would try again and again and again to land just one blow on Deku, but it wouldn't work. Eventually, Bakugo would find himself panting for air since he was tired, and Deku would look at him before saying, "You're stronger than a lot of people, but not stronger than me. Oh, and one more thing. This whole time that you've thought that you've been above me, I've been above you. You're nothing, Bakugo. But me, I'll be the #1 hero, and I'll make sure you can't become one. You dang villain. You shouldn't have even signed up for the hero course in the first place. You act more like a villain. Tell me, do you think All Might ever bullied somebody when he was in middle school?" As he says, "I think not. But anyways, Bakugo, this is not the time for me to embarrass you. I'll do that later. as he would blitz out of there, and Bakugo would just have his eyes super wide open, gritting his teeth as he's gnashing his teeth and blasting explosions, as he would be like, "Damn you, Deku!" Screaming that out as loud as he can, as like in an anime scene, you can see like little pigeons like flying off, like dispersing because of like the loud screaming noise that Bakugo would have let out, as Deku and Bakugo would finally see themselves again, but that would have to wait until the first day of UA, which we have to cover now. Deku would find himself on the first day of UA, and what's going to actually happen here is not going to be too crazy, but it is actually going to be kind of funny, because the second that Deku walks in the classroom, Bakugo would be staring daggers at Deku, just like absolutely having nothing but hatred for the man, as Deku just doesn't care, literally just doesn't care. And eventually Aizawa would end up telling the class to put these on and meet him outside. Deku eventually would do so, and meeting Aizawa outside, he would end up talking to everybody in his classroom, as eventually Aizawa would tell Deku to throw the ball, seeing as Deku not only got 80 robot points, but he actually got 70 rescue points, considering the fact that he still did save Uraraka. That said though, what would pretty much take place is that when Deku's outside, he would end up being given the ball, as Deku, realizing that what he needs now is strength, he would transform into forearms before everybody, as they'd be like, "Whoa, your quirk is so cool." And Deku, gripping the ball with all his strength, would throw that thing as far as he possibly could, getting, I don't even know how strong forearms is. I wouldn't even be able to tell you guys how many meters he gets, but let's just chalk it up to an impressive amount, right? After this happens, everybody would just be hyping Deku up, and Bakugo would realize something. Deku not only has the ability to transform into that other thing that he saw that day, but more, as Bakugo would grit his teeth saying, "Deku," rushing over to him trying to like hit him with an explosion, with Aizawa grabbing him with his scarf and disactivating his quirk, telling him that if he does that again, he'll expel him, with Bakugo gritting his teeth and being like, "Whatever." Finally, Deku would then go on to take the next couple of exams, as it would consist of a race, the side-to-side jumps, and a grip strength test. And Deku would have just enough time to complete those before finally his time limit expired, and Deku had to continue to complete the rest of the exam with nothing but his physical body. But considering the fact that Deku's been training this whole time, I don't think it's going to be too hard for Deku, and he would be able to do it a-okay. So he's able to pass the test overall, not getting last place, seeing as he was able to do very well in the ball throw, decently well in this the running thing, but the thing that he mainly did the best on was the grip strength test, seeing as he shattered it and got a very high score in that. So Deku had his spot secured, meaning that the person who's actually going to be getting expelled in this timeline is going to be Mineta. Now, why do I say Mineta? Because Mineta just sort of adds this pervy comedic relief, which I don't really mind. I don't really care for, honestly. So let's get rid of him, since, you know, like, what has he ever done what does he ever do to the story? What does he ever do for the story, right? So yeah, we're gonna be getting rid of Mineta. RIP in the comments, Mineta. But yeah, anyways, after this would happen, one thing would be very clear to the class, and it's that Deku has a drawback. And that drawback is he can't exactly be in his alien form for more than 10 minutes. That's something that all of them would realize the first day, and one thing that Bakugo would definitely take note of. Okay, after the quirk apprehension exam would be over, the students would all begin to make their way home, and it would be in this moment that Deku would grab his things and make his way outside, when he would notice that Bakugo's walking eerily close behind him. Eventually, Bakugo would just walk right past Deku before saying, "Out of the way, loser," as he would walk right past him, and Deku would be wondering to himself why Bakugo didn't make some dumb remark, why he didn't try to shoulder check him or something. And then he would think to himself, maybe Bakugo finally respects me, before thinking, yeah, no, that's definitely not it. And Bakugo would suddenly stop walking before he turns to Deku and says, "Hey, don't think that I'm gonna let you get away with hiding your quirk from me. I'm gonna get even with you, but not yet. Clearly you beat me today, but I swear it, Deku. I'll beat you every other day I get the chance." As Deku would look at him walk away, and Bakugo would just grit his teeth as he walks off and yells something rude out, right? From here, Deku would end up making his way home, where he would end up telling Inko about everything that happened. She would be extremely excited, and he would even get on a FaceTime call with his daddy Ashi, going on to tell him everything that happened and how sadly one student actually ended up getting expelled from UA. With Deku saying he didn't think he had to be, considering the fact that he actually had a great quirk, if not for the fact that he had a horrible personality. They would ask him what he means, and Deku would go on to say that he was a bit of actually a lot of a pervert, as his family goes on to laugh, and they would have a good night, as the very next day would come around, and Deku would have his first official day of UA class. Deku walking into the classroom would end up having nothing but normal studies, math, reading, history, science, all those dumb things, right? And eventually he would have a lunch, which would be towards the end of the day before their final class of the day, which is a 3-hour class. Luckily, it's the class that they're all there for, hero training. So Deku would make his way to the cafeteria, getting the best school food I've ever seen. I don't know if I'm the only one with this, but if you guys saw the anime and you guys saw the food that these kids were getting for lunch, you'd want to go to UA. And hear me out, I wouldn't even be there for the hero course training, because I'm not doing that. I'd be there for general studies straight up, just because I want that food. But hey, me and my gluttony aside, after this would happen, Deku and everybody else would be in the classroom, as eventually, you guessed it, a blonde-haired man would bust through the door going, "I am here!" coming in through the door like a normal person, as All Might would finally end up revealing himself to the class and basically going on a tangent about how he's going to be their hero teacher, with everybody freaking out, being like, "Oh no, is All Might going to expel me?" With All Might saying, "Rest assured, class, I won't be doing any expelling. That's an Aizawa exclusive thing." With everybody getting super excited and All Might telling them, "But for now, put these on, because as I always like to say, the clothes make the pros." As he would click a button, and behind the wall, it would like turn around as a bunch of cool hero costumes would be revealed, and everybody would throw these on, as they would finally end up meeting All Might outside, where they would all be super pumped and hyped for everything that's about to go down. Eventually, it would get to the point where All Might would tell them all that they're going to be choosing lots, and so everybody would pick these random little numbers to determine who their team is going to be, as well as All Might telling them who they're going to be going up against. And so Deku, just like you would expect, is going to be getting paired with Uraraka, right? Just because I didn't really want to do any brain gymnastics and think about some other crazy scenarios, so we're going to be keeping this section the same, but trust me, I'll do a couple of brain gymnastics for the rest of the series. Bakugo and Ida is going to be his opponent, and so the way that I could see this whole thing starting off is that instead of Deku sitting there being all fearful of Bakugo, he would just sort of look at him, realizing that this is low-key a little bit too soon to be able to start beating Bakugo up at this point. With Uraraka looking at Deku and asking him, "What's wrong?" As Deku would look at her and say, "Oh, sorry, nothing. I just caught me staring off into space. Honestly, me and Bakugo have been rivals for as long as I can remember, but it was more like a one-sided rivalry, which is gonna stay the same." As she would be like, "What do you mean?" With Deku saying, "You know, all my life I lost to Bakugo, but I have a feeling everything's about to change." With her saying, "Really? Even with an awesome quirk like yours, you would lose to him?" As Deku would say, something like that. And so eventually they would make their way into the building, as Uraraka and Deku would climb to the second level of the building, as eventually Deku could finally hear it. "Deku!" And explosions blasting closer and closer. Deku, hearing this, would think to himself, if it isn't Bakugo and his explosion quirk, how I miss this sound. As Deku would look at Uraraka and tell her, "Hey, go hide over there. I'll handle Bakugo as quickly as I possibly can." With Uraraka saying, "Are you sure? You're not going to get hurt or anything, are you?" With Deku saying, "Trust me, hurt is the last thing that's about to happen." Deku's about to be in a world of pain. As Uraraka would say, "Alright, I trust you." And so it would be in this moment that Deku would pretty much just transform, as he would hold out his watch and say, "Alright, better time, there's no better time than now," slamming his hand on the watch as he would transform into Ghost Freak. Suddenly, Deku would transform into something that Bakugo couldn't even hit. Literally, the first time he did this, he turned into XLR8 because there was so much open space that Deku could just run circles around Bakugo. But here, he won't exactly be having that same opportunity. So he decided to use Ghost Freak to basically take this battle and make it as quick as humanly possible. The second that Bakugo would arrive, Bakugo would look at this strange creature flying in front of him and say, "Deku, I know that's you!" throwing an explosion at it, as Deku would just stand there. The smoke would clear, and Bakugo would be like, "What the? I swear I hit you." With Deku saying, "Did you?" As he would go towards Bakugo, and punch him square in the face, with Bakugo gritting his teeth and throwing another explosion, and Deku laughing, saying, "You still don't get it, do you? You can't hit me, Bakugo. How are you gonna hit a ghost?" As Bakugo would realize, "What the? You can become a ghost too? What the heck is this quirk, Deku? Tell me now. Why don't you fight me like a man, Deku? Come on, I'm just itching to rip you a new one." With Deku saying, "Yeah, no. For the past couple of years of my life, you've beat me up with me not doing a thing about it. You know what? I think it's time we flip the script," as he would begin to beat down on Bakugo, hitting him over and over and over and over. And good thing is that Bakugo was extremely durable, so Deku wasn't just having a bit of fun, he was having a lot of fun with Bakugo, destroying him and dismantling him thoroughly. After Bakugo would be cleanly knocked out, Deku would end up grabbing his tape and wrapping it around Bakugo, taking him out, as he would fly straight through the walls and the floors, eventually making his way towards Uraraka's room, sorry, not Uraraka, but Ida's room, as Ida would end up being like, "Ah, hero! Well, you will not be getting your hands on this bomb," using his speed quirk to basically blitz at Deku, but Deku would just go right through him, going to where the bomb is before making contact with it and saying, "Hero team wins," with All Might yelling that out in the hero comms, and everybody watching this being super impressed, being like, "What can this guy transform into?" With Deku finally de-transforming and Ida congratulating him for a well fought victory, saying he had no idea he had something like this in his weapon arsenal as well. As Deku would say, "Yeah, I'm kind of full of surprises," as from here they would all make their way to their examination room, or the room where all the cameras are at and stuff like that, where they can actually watch the live feed, and Momo would end up telling everybody that Deku is clearly the MVP. He managed to take Bakugo out without taking any damage at all, and touch the bomb without Ida being able to do a thing about it. Deku transforming into that new thing that he was able to transform into, she would say monster, as Deku would say, "Actually, it's an alien," with her being like, "What do you mean an alien?" And Deku saying, "Don't worry about it." From here, Momo would be like, "Okay," as Deku would just laugh, and the rest of the class would be like, as eventually everybody else would end up having their own hero versus villains thing go on, as eventually Deku would finally find himself making his way home, and Bakugo would find himself in the infirmary, next to Recovery Girl, who would just barely have kissed his forehead, with Bakugo going, "Get your lips off me, lady," and him basically realizing that he got beat up very badly. Bakugo in this moment would begin to grit his teeth as his entire reality was shattering in front of him. The first time Deku revealed his quirk, he wasn't able to hit him. The second time that Deku revealed his quirk, he wasn't able to beat him. And this time, it's back to not being able to do a thing about Deku. Not only was I not able to hit him, but he was able to beat me up, and I couldn't do a thing about it. Bakugo grits his teeth, thinking to himself that there has to be a way to beat him. That loser's not going to be getting the best of him. And so Bakugo would just sit there gritting his teeth as he would scream out something, being like, "Damn it!" And eventually we would cut to Deku as he would sneeze, being in his room watching a Xehther video. Something, chef's kiss, right? So, but there's one thing that Deku would do that I'm pretty sure some of you guys haven't done, and that's leave a like on the video, because if we don't get a lot of likes on this video is not going to hit the algorithm, and the amount of money I spent just to make the thumbnail is going to go to massive waste. Guys, you can't tell me this thumbnail's not fire. It's saucy. All right, so leave a like just for the thumbnail alone. The story itself could be garbage, but hear me out, it's a good thumbnail though, right? Clickbait. Anyways though, continuing forward with the story, eventually we would get 2 weeks worth of days of everybody just taking normal hero day classes and stuff like that, the regular stuff, and eventually Mr. Aizawa would hand out permission slips to everybody, telling them to sign them and stuff. Whenever I think of permission slip and needing to sign something, I always think back to when report cards would come out, and I would always try to hide my report card from my parents. Sometimes I'd be successful, other times I would forge their signature and go to ISS, but hey, who, no one remembers that stuff, right? So, eventually the day would come where they would all finally make their way back into class, and he would say, "All right, has everybody got their permission slip signed?" And everybody would be like, "Oh yeah, we sure have," as eventually they would all mount this giant bus, and they would make their way towards the USJ. Once they would start getting closer and closer, Aizawa would end up telling them that they're not going to be doing this hero training alone. They're actually going to be having a bit of help from Pro Hero. 13. Eventually 13 would make her presence known, and she would begin to just babble on and on and on about heroes and quirk usage and how it's dangerous and how they need to be able to use their quirks properly and yada yada yada. The students would be hearing her until eventually a purple mist would end up shooting in the middle of the USJ, which would be none other than Kurogiri. And here I would like to say that a couple of events changed, but not really. There's really no way that Deku's going to be able to prevent Kurogiri from teleporting him out of there, since he wouldn't be able to react fast enough. And so the second that Deku would look at Kurogiri, he wouldn't be exactly too sure if it's a real villain or a fake villain. And Kirishima would say, "Whoa, that's awesome. You guys have fake villains and everything." With Aizawa was saying, "Those are not fake villains. Everybody get back." But the second that would be said, Kurogiri would teleport multiple kids out of that area, as Deku would be one of the unlucky people to actually be teleported straight towards where the water area was at. Unfortunately for Deku, this means that his watch would instantly go active, sensing the danger nearby, since there was a bunch of very, very dangerous water villains in the water, and Deku was about to be attacked by one. Suyu was going to be a couple seconds too late to save Deku, and so his watch would end up transforming him into Ripjaws, as he would begin to dismantle each and every single one of the villains in the water, and Suyu, realizing that Deku's handling them, would just save Mineta getting on top of the boat, as Deku would rip through each and every individual villain. In the original, they sort of waited on the boat for a couple of minutes, trying to see what happened, but this time around, that time's going to be replaced by Deku becoming an Deku being a total bad boy, you know what I mean? And because of that, Deku is sort of just going to be, why would I say bad boy? I just didn't want to say the other thing, my bad, y'all. But, Deku would just be super, super cool, and he would beat everybody up, right? As eventually he would make his way off of that, and he would call Mineta and Suyu, telling them to hop on, as he would jump on top of his back and he would swim them back to shore. Suddenly, Deku would undo the transformation, and realizing that just a couple of meters nearby, Aizawa was currently facing off against a bunch of villains, Deku would say that he can't just stand by here and feel hopeless, as eventually he would say, "I gotta help some way, somehow." So what Deku would do is say, "Guess there's no better time than now to test out these hero gadgets," as he would take out these two like blasters that Deku would have created that blast plasma energy, right? And it's not just normal plasma energy, but it's able to shoot like heat plasma energy, because he got the idea from Heat Blast, an ability that he uses super, super often. Plus, Diamond Head's able to shoot diamonds, so he thought, hey, if I make myself some projectile makers, I'll be able to fight without using my watch, and I'll be able to do it away from close quarters combat, since if I get too close, I'll probably get beat. So Deku doing this would actually end up helping Aizawa out with a couple of villains, and Aizawa would end up telling Deku to get out of there, that it's too dangerous to be there fighting. And Deku would say, "Exactly, so why are you here?" With Aizawa saying, "I'm a hero, kid." They would face more and more villains, until eventually the main threat of this whole arc would finally start acting up, as Shigaraki would say, "It's not fair, it's not fair. Nomu, kill the brat." And suddenly, the Nomu would come shooting at the direction of Deku, as it would punch him square in the gut, knocking all the air out of him. I don't know how many times you guys have had this experience where you like take a hit so hard that like all the air is completely knocked out of you, and you're just sitting there rolling on the ground like gasping for air. That would happen to Deku, except it would also come with 2 cracked ribs and him like straight up just coughing out tons of blood, as well as throwing up the second that he lands. Deku would be there on the ground as the Nomu would rush at him once more and would actually grab him by the hair. It would be in this moment that the Nomu would slam his face into the concrete, and Deku would be in massive amounts of pain. Aizawa from here, using a scarf, would grab onto the Nomu as he would like try to like hold it back from hitting Deku more and more. But the more that Aizawa would do this, the less it would like actually matter, because even though he was using his anti-quirk thing on him, it didn't matter, because of the fact that this Nomu wasn't just strong because for no reason, but it was strong because of the fact that it just had superhuman strength. It's not a quirk, just as we would have discovered in the original, obviously. And so Deku, instead of Aizawa being the one who's getting absolutely beat on, it would actually be Deku. leading Aizawa to begin like freaking out, wondering how in the world he's gonna help this kid. And to now, it had been approximately 9 minutes and 40 something seconds. So Deku only had to tolerate getting beat on for another 20 more seconds, and he could finally transform into another alien. But Deku had to take a lot more damage, and the Nomu was dang near about to land the finishing blow on Deku, when suddenly Deku would say, stop, or no, not stop. Deku would like hold onto his watch and like smack it as he would finally transform into another alien, with Deku growing massively in size, turning into forearms, as he would immediately grab onto the Nomu's fist and begin like holding it, then he uses his other arm to grab onto the Nomu's arm as well, and with his two bottom arms, Deku would begin punching the Nomu's face over and 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 over, until the Nomu would screech at Deku, shooting a bunch of nasty saliva at his face, and Deku would say, "Ugh, that's disgusting." As from here, Deku would then punch the Nomu in the stomach and kick it away, with the Nomu screeching at Deku, and Aizawa watching this battle take place. Deku would rush in towards the direction of the Nomu once more, throwing blow after blow after blow after blow at the Nomu, just punching it and holding it off as long as he possibly could. Now, I don't know how strong exactly I want to make forearms. I think that making them comparable to the Nomu is pretty fair, but not stronger than All Might. So All Might could beat him, but not the Nomu, since he was just slightly stronger. So Deku would land blow after blow after blow after blow, and eventually he would have landed like 200 hits on this thing, as it would finally begin to slow down, and Deku would just keep going at it, as eventually you could hear All Might coming in the distance being like, "I am here," looking super serious, as Deku would say, "That's All Might, I gotta show off," with Deku like finally like being like, "Okay, I gotta do this," as he would throw one final punch at the Nomu, sending it flying back, jumping into the air, as Deku would grab all four of his arms and ball them up, slamming it into the chest of the Nomu, as eventually he would grab it by the leg and spin it around so many times until eventually he would throw it into the open area that the USJ has at the roof, as he would blast off like Team Rocket, literally, just the same way that All Might did it, but in a bit of a different manner, as All Might would finally end up going towards where other people actually needed saving, and Deku, with his forearm stay activated, would walk slowly towards the Shigaraki, who would be just completely losing his mind, being like, "Kirigiri, get me out of here!" And so Deku, realizing that he was trying to escape, would begin charging at him, but it would be too late. Kirigiri would teleport him out of there, and unfortunately for the heroes, Shigaraki would get out of there unscathed, as it would be in this moment that Deku would slam his fist onto the ground, and All Might would end up arriving right next to Izuku before telling him that it's okay. He was able to fight back against that thing that looked extremely powerful. Plus, he was able to help so many people out by taking out all those villains with Aizawa, as Deku would look at him and say, "Yeah, you're right." And so Deku would de-transform from that state, as suddenly the students would then be questioned by the authorities, as after this they would be granted 1 week worth of break from UA classes, seeing as the school actually had a little bit of press conference to attend to, considering that they had to make this whole thing die down. So over the course of this next week, Deku would basically just train and focus on using each and every single one of his aliens, trying to figure out new ways, new techniques to use them, because it seemed to him like he was getting a little bad with this stuff. And eventually Deku would realize that he probably is going to be needing a couple more gadgets, considering that what's coming up is the UA Sports Festival. So Deku would create some gadgets for himself, and they would range from bow staff, which is able to electrocute people, and it would be like a bow staff that can actually shrink, like by a click of a button it extends to the size that it needs, and by another click it literally gets as small as a pen. So he's able to use that and carry that on his waist, as well as two blasters that he would actually carry in his jacket, the one that he would actually use for normal combat and fighting and stuff like that. Now, the jacket is obviously going to be the iconic Ben 10 one, the green one with the little Omnitrix logo on it. So yeah, that's going to be the jacket that he has, and it's going to come with the two blasters, which are able to shoot propulsion shocks and are able to do low-key so much more. They're able to even shoot grappling hooks that are able to like shoot him and get him farther to places. And if he slams them on the ground and shoots them at max power, they only get one charge of this. They create like this like electromagnetic field that would shoot out and shock everybody within like a 10-meter radius from him. So, you know, that's sort of cool gadgets. Not only that, but Deku would also end up creating an extremely compact jetpack, which is never actually going to run out of energy, but it could break if, say, somebody was to punch him, send him flying into a wall, and his back hits it. It's a nanotech, really cool jetpack thing that attaches to his back like a chip, and whenever he needs it, at the simple command, a voice command, it will activate, becoming larger as it's able to just propel him into the sky and keep him away from villains so they're not able to actually finish the job. And honestly, I think that these couple of gadgets that he would have made himself would definitely be more than enough to be able to survive the sports festival, right? The first event we would end up getting is obviously going to be the cavalry, not the cavalry battle. What? No, the race, right? And the race is actually going to be very simple for Deku, considering the fact that Izuku has a little alien called XLR8, who's able to completely wipe the floor with the competition and basically speed blitz his way straight to the 10 million point headband. Right after this, things would get a little bit tricky because if you guys do remember, the next event was practically right after it, so Deku wouldn't even be able to use his transformation state during the next event. But considering the fact that Deku in the original was able to pass without using his quirk, basically, I'm gonna be saying that Deku's able to do that just barely this time around as well. And so Deku would end up making his way towards the 1v1 fights, where his first opponent is gonna be Shinso. Now, this normally would be a horrific thing for him, if not for the fact that the Omnitrix is actually able to save him when Deku does inevitably talk back to Shinso. Because there's no way in my mind that Deku is not going to be responding to Shinso's insults and threats. So Deku, after responding to one, Shinso would have a huge grin on his face, as Deku would fall prey to his mind control ability, but luckily for Izuku, the Omnitrix was able to save him out of this sticky situation, transforming him instantly into Cannonball, as he would instantly dash at the direction of Shinso and send him flying off of the arena. Because of this, Deku was able to completely snap out of the mind control state, and so realized that Shinso had completely had him beat. If not for the fact that Deku had the Omnitrix, Shinso probably would have beaten anybody, especially somebody the likes of Bakugo or maybe even Todoroki. So Shinso would actually be congratulated by Deku and told that he has an incredibly powerful quirk, as Shinso would say, "Your praises aren't going to get me into Class 1A. As Deku would say, "No, but my recommendation might." I hope I get to see you again, Shinso, as he would walk off, and so Shinso would just look at Deku and be like, whatever. Suddenly, Deku would find himself in the waiting room, as Izuku would finally be told who his next opponent's gonna be, Todoroki. And Deku could not wait for this to happen, as Izuku realized the perfect thing that he could actually use for this specific situation: Heat Blast. Because from his knowledge, Todoroki has the ability to shoot out ice, and Deku can shoot out fire. But what's interesting to Deku is that Todoroki can also use his fire, but he's confused why Todoroki doesn't do that. Oh, also one change of note is that Todoroki isn't going to be connecting the dots, quote unquote, and thinking that Deku is some sort of secret love affair child of All Might's, right? None of that ends up going down, and instead we would just get a plain 1v1 fight in which neither of them end up actually talking to each other before the fight, and Deku would immediately transform into Heat Blast, as Todoroki would instantly shoot flames at the direction of ice at the direction of Deku, encapsulating him in this giant ice geyser, as Deku would shoot flames out, melting it instantly, as he would fly towards the direction of Todoroki, who would be stunned, like just absolutely stunned. And Deku would shoot flames at Todoroki point blank, as Todoroki would create a wall of ice in front of him, thick enough barely to actually stop these flames from hitting him, and jump out of the way, with Todoroki shooting ice attacks at the direction of Deku, and Deku saying, "Not gonna work," shooting flames after flame after flame after flame at Todoroki, as Todoroki finally would grit his teeth, and by getting like backed up into a corner, literally, Todoroki would end up finding himself in a position where he sort of has to use his flames. But unfortunately for Todoroki, Deku's able to counter that perfectly, by basically absorbing the flames into himself and then opening his mouth wide open, shooting a blast of flames at Todoroki, which would send him flying out of the arena, as Deku would fly up into the air and start completely showboating, shooting flames everywhere, as he would create a vortex of fire, fly out of it, and eventually Midnight would say, "Alright, that's enough showboating," with Deku finally leaving that area, and Bakugo watching that whole thing from the stands would start thinking up of ways that he could possibly counter all of Deku's aliens, thinking of which alien he's going to use, as Bakugo realizes that there's really only one alien that he really has to worry about, and that's Ghost Freak. So Bakugo would begin strategizing, and so we would eventually find ourselves in the 1v1 battle arena, with Deku looking at Bakugo with a smile on his face and saying, "How will I beat you this time? Should I use Ghost Freak and make sure that everybody watches you get publicly beaten? Nah, I don't want to do that. I want to give you a chance to beat me. That way you don't say that I cheated or something. Should I use Heat Blast, put your explosions to shame? Or should I use XLR and show everybody that I'm so fast you can't even touch me? So many ways I could beat you. I could also just turn into a cannonball and send you flying. But where's the fun in that? Forearms would probably be able to take you out physically, but you'd probably be too fast for me to hit you." As Deku would have a huge smirk on his face and say, "I know." As eventually, Midnight would say, "Are you ready for the final battle?" And everybody would begin cheering and roaring in the stands as they're like, "Yeah!" And eventually Midnight would say, "Begin!" blowing the starter's pistol, as Bakugo would go launch himself straight towards the direction of Deku, blowing explosion after explosion after explosion, meaning that there was a huge thing of smoke, as eventually it would be revealed that Deku had transformed into Diamond Head, with Bakugo being absolutely surprised since he had still yet to see this one. And so Deku would instantly begin shooting diamonds towards the direction of Bakugo, which he would actually have to dodge, but eventually Bakugo, realizing that he can't exactly land a full-fledged attack on Deku if he continues shooting all these shards. He has this crazy durability and his punches are hitting like tanks. Bakugo would realize that there's really only one way to get him, and that's to catch him completely off guard. So Bakugo begins to tank blow after blow after blow, with Deku getting more and more vicious as the battle goes on, and Bakugo eventually getting to a state where he would just be laid out flat on the ground. Bakugo would look like he was just completely out for the count, and Deku would say, "You ready to give up, Bakugo? Because this isn't gonna stop with me beating you and knocking you off of the ring. I want you to say." And Bakugo would finally say, I as like Deku would have a smile on his face and he would turn around saying, "Hey everybody, listen to what he's about to say," with Bakugo saying, "I'll kill you," blasting out a gigantic blast of explosion right point blank at Deku's backside, as Deku would have large shards of his crystal body blown everywhere, and Bakugo would finally have a smirk on his face as he would wipe the blood off and say, "You done yet, Deku? Looks like I was finally able to beat you." But Deku, standing there with a large chunk of his body missing, would turn around as it begins regenerating, as Deku would begin turning around towards Bakugo, and with most of his body literally missing, it begins to heal itself, with Deku saying, "You know, Bakugo, had I been transformed into any other one of my aliens, you probably would have beat me. But Diamond Head is the most durable of them all, so there's no way you're going to be beating me with some cheap trick like that. It's almost pitiful, really. I never thought the great and mighty Bakugo would resort to something like that. You're weak, Bakugo, and that's all you ever will be. Now, get out of here." He would say that as he would grab Bakugo and slam him into the outskirts of the ring, with Deku being declared the winner, as his entire body would have fully regenerated, and Deku would just hold one arm up as he would say, "Yeah!" Suddenly, we would finally flash forward to when Deku's receiving his medal, Bakugo's getting second place, and he's just sitting there silent, like his whole demeanor had changed. He's not sitting there all angry, he's just accepted the fact that he's always going to play second fiddle to Deku. He hates it, but what can he do? Deku's quirk is just too versatile, and Bakugo can't seem to beat a single one of his transformations. The anger would begin getting to Bakugo, and eventually it would almost feel like Bakugo feels like crying. almost a tear would come shooting out of Bakugo's face as Deku notices this and wants to say something. He almost feels bad, but he wouldn't because of the fact that he remembers what Bakugo did to him. And Deku would have made his biggest mistake of his life that day. Eventually, the students would make their way back towards UA, as they would all be told to pick their hero names as well as who they're going to be interning with for the internship program. And so Deku, looking at the long list of everybody who would have put a request in for him, would finally decide that he knows exactly who he's going to be going with. Not gonna lie guys, it's been a couple of days since I've recorded a part for this thing, so I'm just gonna jump into it and start with the internship program. Alright, so Deku is going to be picking the pro hero Mirko for this version. Why? Because there really is no specific hero that I can see him going to and it making like the biggest difference in the world. Deku's just gonna go for Mirko because of the fact that she is one of his favorite heroes and she ended up sending him a request, which is something interesting because nobody else actually got a request from her. And also, can we just pause for a moment and acknowledge the fact that Mirko should have sent a request to Bakugo? I mean, it would have been a perfect match made in heaven, but hey, I'm not the author. Anyways, yeah, Deku going with Mirko changes a couple of things. Number one, this means that Ida unfortunately doesn't actually end up getting saved by Zuko. Without Deku being the one that's in Hosu City, those situations that we get in the original aren't going to be playing out like they do, meaning that Ida is most likely going to die or he's going to be basically having his hero career stunned. Like, it's over. Because if you guys were actually watching the anime, where Stain was actually about to stab Ida was in his spinal cord. So he was A, gonna straight up kill him, or B, make sure that he could never walk again. And unfortunately for Ida, his whole quirk revolves around his legs, so unless Ida can find some way of being healed, there's no way Ida's gonna ever go back to becoming a pro hero again. So unfortunately, Ida would have put himself in the same situation as his brother, and while everybody else is enjoying their time in their internship programs, UA would actually be super busy trying to calm this whole situation down. Eventually, when everybody would return back to class, they would all be told that class is going to be canceled for at least a month, with the students asking, wait, why? What happened? Why is class being canceled? And Aizawa would look at them plainly and say, Ida's hospitalized. He'll never become a pro hero. He went after Stain and Stain roughed him up a bit. With everybody just being like, what? And them all freaking out about Ida and everybody just being like, there's no way. How did this happen? And Aizawa and everybody else would just be like, all right, that's enough. We're not talking about this. As UA would actually end up visiting Ida, or the UA class, right? They would end up visiting Ida and they would end up finding out what really happened, with Ida explaining to them everything that went down and the UA media going crazy, with everybody being like, UA should be shut down. One of their hero students nearly got killed while just on an internship. That pro hero specifically who let it happen would actually end up having his license suspended for a couple of months. And Ida and his whole family would actually be busy trying to tell the world that everything's okay, with Ida eventually making his way toward the media and telling everybody that it was his own selfish choices, telling everybody of what happened with his brother, how he felt so much rage and wanted to get back at the hero killer, and he would end up saying that in that moment he wasn't acting like a hero, so if anything he doesn't deserve to become a pro hero, and it wasn't Yue's negligence that led to this, but his own. He let his own emotions get the better of him, and he would say that this should be a warning to any pro heroes who are putting their own emotions before what the job is truly about. He would say that he hopes that other heroes don't make the same mistake that he did, and he would wish everybody the best, as he would say that UA is the greatest school he's ever been to, and he's always going to stand by that. As the media would finally calm down, being like, you know what, like, this kid's right, like, UA isn't that bad, and a couple of weeks would pass as eventually, after 2 months, mind you, 2 months, UA would finally find themselves back on track, meaning that the forest training camp arc stuff like that stuff actually doesn't even end up taking place, because UA actually doesn't even want the school stuff to actually happen until like they normalize everything again. So in 1 month, like a lot later than what would happen, they're finally going to end up taking the final exams. And then after that, 1 week after that, they're going to be going on their forest training camp trip, which still happens. But because there was like 2 months off of school, Bakugo was doing everything and anything that he possibly could have done to get stronger this entire time. He was pushing his body to its utter limits, and Bakugo was not stopping at all, blowing explosion after explosion after explosion in Dagobah Beach, training as hard as he possibly could, trying to beat Deku with nothing on his mind but crushing him, or maybe even killing him. Bakugo would have that at the back of his mind, not really wanting to admit that that's what he wants, but it is, as eventually the day would come where somebody would be walking by noticing that Bakugo was going kind of crazy. Now, this individual would actually be a villain broker, the one that's actually responsible for the League of Villains, right? And he would end up pretty much going over to Bakugo and telling him that, you know, like if he wants to get power, he knows somebody who can get him some power. But Bakugo looking at him like he's not exactly just gonna like fall over and be like, all right, cool, I'll become a villain. Like he's not gonna do that. That's not what Bakugo's about. So Bakugo's like, get out of here, scram, I'm not gonna become a villain. And if anything, if you don't get lost in the next 5 seconds, I'll make sure that you end up in jail. As the villain broker would run away from there, and Bakugo would continue his training, as he would think about the prospect, saying, I could get stronger and beat Deku, but he would say, but that goes against all my morals. As from here, he continues training and training and training and training until eventually UA would pick back up, they would have their normal day-to-day classes activities, and eventually we would find ourselves in the final exams. Now, this timeline, Deku and Bakugo are still going to be paired up against All Might, just like they are in the original, and so Deku and Bakugo would be the ones doing their absolute best in order to defeat All Might this time around. This time, Deku and Bakugo straight up don't even speak to each other. Deku tries to make some plans and tries telling Bakugo what they should do, but Bakugo doesn't even look at him, say like, I hate you or nothing. He's just straight quiet, with Deku thinking to himself that this is not even the Bakugo he knows, that he honestly wishes Bakugo would yell at him or say something at least. He's sort of getting worried. Maybe he did break Bakugo. And Deku thinking this would be like, no, like all the things that Bakugo did to me, he deserves it. Yeah, he deserves it, Deku would think. As from here, the two would end up doing what they have to do, and eventually we would find ourselves with them both facing off against All Might. Bakugo comes flying in as he shoots an explosion at All Might's face, and Deku, seeing all this go down, would realize that he has an opening, as Deku would finally, using his Omnitrix, would transform into Cannonball. As he would go shooting towards the direction of All Might and spinning, All Might would be sent flying back. As from here, Deku would realize that his best chance of winning this battle without actually injuring All Might would probably be to just escape. As he would begin rolling as fast as he possibly can towards the direction of the exit, suddenly All Might comes flying in as he throws a punch in the ground, which would shatter everything, causing Deku to actually tumble out of his cannonball state and then fall onto the ground, as he would stand up and say, come on, All Might, we both know this is the best way for this battle to end. Nobody gets hurt, with All Might saying, I'm afraid I can't allow that, hero. As from here, he would get serious and throw a punch at Deku, which would send him flying through a building, as Bakugo would come flying in, shooting an explosion square at All Might, which he would tank before grabbing him by the arms and slamming him on the ground. But Bakugo's not having it. He would shoot an explosion at the ground, kicking All Might in the chin, before he then spins mid-air and shoots 4 explosions consecutively at All Might's stomach, sending him flying back, as Bakugo would shoot up into the sky and shoot 16 AP shots at All Might, which would create a huge fog, which Deku would use the opportunity to just roll on out of there, as Bakugo was shooting more and more and more explosions at All Might, but All Might would finally get up, rushing at Bakugo. He would throw a punch at him as he would send Bakugo into one of the buildings, and right as Bakugo and All Might were about to get into it, Deku would actually have rolled out, as you could just hear on the intercoms, Hero Team wins! And Deku and Bakugo would actually end up moving on. As from here, Bakugo would just have a smile on his face as he would think, looks like the training paid off, as he just walks off silently, not really caring to talk to All Might or anything, with Deku realizing that Bakugo got a lot stronger. He did very well against All Might, and that's honestly kind of scary, but he would put that at the back of his head, and eventually the class day would end as everybody would finally go to the forest training camp area, where, just like you would expect in the original, events go down just like they do in canon, except like 2.5 months later. So it's not exactly a big change, but it is a change nonetheless. This would lead us to Deku's point of view, as he would find himself inside of the back of a bus, as eventually they would stop to see this beautiful view of a forest, and every UA student would actually hop off the bus as they begin to admire the beauty around them. Eventually, after a couple of minutes would pass by, they would be like, wait, but isn't the training grounds over there? As it would be too late, and they would be trapped there, as suddenly one of the wild cats would actually end up throwing them off of the edge, and eventually all of them would end up being forced with making their way back towards the training grounds all on their own. So Deku would transform into Ditto, and the rest of the UA class would go through the forest training camp exercise as similar as they did to the original, seeing as Ditto is very helpful, but I don't think that it's going to be changing the time that it takes them to actually run through the forest. So they would arrive extremely exhausted, and once they would do so, they would all be told that they're going to be having a nice warm cooked meal for them. They would all eat, and eventually they would find themselves in the hot tubs area, right? As it would be in this moment that we would get the similar scene to the original where Kota would actually end up stopping, or actually we wouldn't, because Minetta's not here this time around. That's interesting. That means that this time around, Deku's not actually going to be learning what Kota's backstory is. Instead, we end up having just a normal night, as eventually the following 3 next nights would pass by, and the heroes would have done so much training together and gotten a little bit stronger every single day, as eventually we would find ourselves in the day when Kota would eventually end up going off on his own, and Deku would end up grabbing a bowl of curry, thinking that this kid should probably eat something. Following him into the forest, he would see Kota crying, as eventually he would walk over towards him and ask him what's wrong, with him yelling at Deku, "Get out of here, I don't want to talk to you. Why'd you follow me out here anyways?" With Deku looking at Kota and saying that, you know, he understands what he's going through. As Kota would say, "You understand? You're a hero. You wouldn't be trying to become a hero if you knew what I was going through. So get lost. I don't need you or any help." As from here, Deku would just sort of stay silent, look at Kota, put the curry bowl down, as he would turn the corner and begin walking away. But it would be in this moment that the villain Muscular would end up arriving, and Kota would finally need some help. Eventually, Deku using the Omnitrix would end up instantly transforming into Ghost Freak, seeing as it is nighttime and is probably the strongest one that he has when it comes to nighttime battles. Plus, this dude won't be able to hit him, so it's perfect. Eventually, Muscular would catch wind of Deku and say, "Huh, what a freaky quirk. I can't wait to destroy you," rushing towards the direction of Deku as he would punch right through him, and Deku would grab Muscular, throwing him up into the air, as whipping his tail, he would hit Muscular and send him flying off of the cliff, as Muscular would hit the ground with a giant thud and end up getting back up, as he would say, "We're not done here," expanding in mass using his muscles, as he would jump, he would begin like trying to climb back up there. And so Deku would fly down and begin hitting Muscular over and over again, trying to knock him off the cliff, but Muscular would do the best that he can to continue climbing, saying, "If I can't hit you, I'll just have to kill the kid." With Deku realizing that even though Muscular can't hit him, Muscular's smarter than he looks. If he can't hit him, then he's gonna kill the kid. So Muscular would say, "Which is it, kid? Do I kill him or do I kill you?" With Deku having to make a last minute choice, as he would say, "Do me," and he would de-transform, as Muscular would grab Deku and say, "Smart choice," slamming him into the mountainside, as Deku would let out a massive scream, and Muscular would say, "Now make sure you don't transform into anything, or I'll make sure to gut that kid alive." As from here, Deku would be taking blow after blow after blow from Muscular, as like eventually Deku would finally have a smirk on his face, transforming into Ghost Freak once more, as he flies up and hits a piece of the mountainside, which would cause a bunch of rubble to come down on Muscular, which Muscular would throw off by using his muscles, by using his super strength, right? As Deku would be like, "What's it gonna take to beat this guy?" Flying over towards Kota, as he would grab him and fly away towards the direction of where Aizawa and the rest of the people should be at. As he would be doing this, Muscular would actually be giving chase to Deku, and eventually Muscular would plow through the forest, breaking tree down after tree, as eventually Deku would arrive in front of Aizawa, and Deku would say, "Aizawa, your quirk, now!" With Aizawa using his erasure quirk on Muscular, and Deku rushing at him before landing a couple more blows, and Aizawa would using his scarf, he would end up detaining him, as Muscular would be taken out relatively quickly, and after this would take place, Deku would say, "Thanks, Aizawa. I had a harder time than I had bargained for fighting against this freak." As from here, he would say, "I gotta help everybody else," flying off towards the direction of where Tokiyami and Dupli Arms would be at, as he would help them out with their situation by leading Tokiyami towards the direction of Bakugo and Todoroki. And eventually what would end up taking place is that we would get the same situations, meaning Uraraka and Tsuyu versus Toya, which would lead to the group finding them and the defeation of Moonfish and stuff like that. This means that Mr. Compressor still ends up taking Bakugo, as well as Tokiyami, and like you would expect, Deku using his Ghost Freak abilities would be able to get a hold of Tokiyami like he would in the original, but with different means obviously, as eventually after this would take place, he would continue chasing after Mr. Compress, trying to stop him from taking Bakugo, as eventually Mr. Compress would end up making his way through the portal and getting out of there because of the fact that Deku's time limit would run out, and after hearing that dreaded noise, Deku would fall down onto the ground, not being able to hold up the transformation, as Mr. Compress, Dabi, and the rest of the villains would smile, and Bakugo would be taken away, as he wouldn't even look scared or have his arm extended. He would just think to himself that it is what it is. Bakugo from here would be interrogated by the villains, and they would end up basically telling him to join them. In the original, Bakugo obviously doesn't do this, but this time around, he's going to be having more of a reason to actually do this, just because of the fact that he has so much hatred in his heart right now for Deku that it's sort of overwhelming him wanting to become a pro hero. Plus, if he gets power, he can just backstab this guy that's giving him it, and that way he can actually go on to defeat Deku and still become a hero. So that would be what Bakugo's thinking of doing, but All For One's not easily fooled. He's not just gonna hand Bakugo a quirk because he says that he's a hero. No. All For One is much more devious than that. And so what All For One would do is basically tell Bakugo to prove his allegiance to him, to bring him the head of 3 pro heroes. With Bakugo, once he hears this, he would be shocked, being like, "What? You want me to kill 3 pro heroes? You're insane. I'm not doing that." As from here, All For One would say, "Shame. Then I guess that Izuku Midoriya fellow will continue to beat you down, and I won't be giving you the quirk capable of taking him down once and for all." With Bakugo hearing that, he would think, "You couldn't do that, could you? You don't have a quirk strong enough. Plus, no one's ever heard about passing quirks down." All For One would begin laughing before then telling him he can do whatever he wants. Before then telling Bakugo to come here, as Bakugo would do so, and All For One would put his hand on All Might's on Bakugo's head, as he would then go on to give him a quirk capable of turning his bones into adamantium. Not exactly what Wolverine has, but similar to it in the fact that his durability is going to go through the roof, and it also grants him a healing factor, which is going to be off the charts. And you might be thinking, why would you give him that if you're not going to be giving him the claws? Well, think about it this way. The main thing that Bakugo has is a very powerful explosion quirk, but the thing with that is the fact that Bakugo isn't able to fully use his capabilities because his body isn't strong enough to be able to handle the massive explosions that the real power of his explosions could actually dish out. And Bakugo constantly has to hold back because if he doesn't, he could blow off one of his arms eventually. So this would help him a lot with that. And not only that, but All Might would actually give him another quirk, which is called Double Impact, which basically makes it so that for every explosion he lands, it doubles in strength the more he lands. So say he lands one explosion, the next one's going to be double in power, and the next one after that is going to be double in power, double in power, double in power. And that's how the quirk works. So Bakugo got 2 insane quirk upgrades, which make Bakugo so much stronger than anything that we've seen thus yet into the My Hero Academia universe. And so this eventually leads to Bakugo sort of wavering in his resolve, realizing that if he takes this offer, all he has to do is kill 3 pro heroes and he'll finally have the power in order to defeat Izuku. He would think nobody has to know, right? No one's gonna find out. I can take this guy out once I get these quirks. Yeah, that's exactly what I'll do. As from here, Bakugo begins to start being manipulated by All For One, as he would have his own Majin Vegeta moment, where he would essentially trade his sanity and his own status as a hero for power. Bakugo taking the deal, he would go out and take out 3 small-time heroes, bringing them to All For One, as All For One would have a huge grin on his face and say, "Perfect." From here, he would grant Bakugo access to both of those brand new quirks, and now Bakugo would be an absolute monster. His explosions are going to be insane. He's basically going to be having nukes in his hand, and not only that, but he has such insane durability that dude might as well be invulnerable. Bro might as well be immortal straight up. Like, that's how much durability he has in his body. Plus, if he lands like 10 explosions on you, you basically are getting Hiroshima. Like, there's no if, and, or buts about it. That's how strong this version of Bakugo is. and All For One would promise Bakugo even more power the more loyal that he is to him. So Bakugo would now begin getting power hungry, not realizing that the more quirks that his body would actually end up taking, the more corrupted he's going to become, until eventually he's nothing but a mindless hound, similar to a Nomu. But Bakugo has no clue of this, and one thing that Bakugo hasn't noticed is that he has sort of lost a part of himself, his rationale. So while all this would be taking place, All Might and the heroes would all be trying to find a way to get Bakugo back, as eventually we would have the same thing that goes down in the original with all the students trying to go after Bakugo to save him take place like they would in the original. This means that All Might and the pro heroes would arrive, capture all of the villains, and Bakugo would just be standing there in the midst of everything wearing the same outfit that he is in the original. This means that Deku, Todoroki, Ida, Kirishima, and the likes would end up creating that ice geyser that they would use to shoot up into the sky, as Deku would tell Kirishima to yell out for Bakugo to call him over. This would lead them to flying over, as Kirishima would say, "Bakugo, grab on!" with Bakugo looking at them and not even attempting to shoot up into the sky. In this moment, Deku and everybody there who was in that moment would realize that Bakugo didn't do it, and eventually they would shoot off farther, landing on top of a building as they would turn towards the direction of where Bakugo and All For One are at. As All Might would look at Bakugo and say, "Young Bakugo, why didn't you go with them? They could have saved you." As Bakugo would turn to him and say, "You know, All Might, I don't need them anymore. All For One's promised me power, and that's all I need." As from here, All Might would stop and freeze in that moment, being like, "Katsuki, you didn't." As All For One would break out into a maniacal laughter, as the rest of the villains would be teleported away like they would be in the original, and as this would happen, All For One would begin dying of laughter, as he would turn to Bakugo and say, "Take him out," with Bakugo crossing his arms, shooting explosions and saying, "Gladly," as he would shoot towards the direction of All Might, blasting an explosion right at All Might's face, which All Might would be like, "What the? This explosion is so much stronger than the one that I had last time," as it would send him back flying, and Bakugo would come in with another one that would send him back even further, with All Might coughing out tons of blood and him throwing a punch at Bakugo's face, which would cause Bakugo to just look at him and then turn his head, saying, "That's all you got, number one?" as he would throw another explosion at All Might, followed by another and another and another. Mind you, the power is increasing the more and more explosions he's landing, and at this point, All Might is being covered in blood, as his suit has already practically fallen off, and all he's wearing now is his pants, which are tattered in threads. In this moment, Deku watching this, he just couldn't even bear to watch what's going on, as Deku would connect the dots, realizing that Bakugo's completely lost it, and not only that, but now it looks like Bakugo is even more powerful than All Might, with Deku realizing that it's not a like back and forth fight. Bakugo was completely decimating him, thinking to himself if there's actually even any way that he could actually defeat Bakugo in this moment. As from here, Deku would say that he hopes this upgrade works. From here, he would go rushing towards the direction of Bakugo using Heat Blast, as he would fly towards that direction and he would shoot a blast of fire at the direction of Bakugo, which Bakugo wouldn't even move out of the way for. Bakugo would just look up towards the direction of Deku, saying, "Is that all you got?" as Deku would be stunned, being like, "What? There's no way," with Bakugo shooting over towards the direction of Deku and landing an explosion on Deku so hard that it would send him flying back. Deku would be sent crashing through a building, as in that moment Deku would say, "I hope this works," tapping on the Omnitrix once more as he would transform into Diamond Head, with Bakugo throwing another explosion at him, which would crack the side of his face, followed by another, which would begin cracking his arm, another, which would crack his chest, and another, which he would use to crack more of his head, as he would grab it and bend it, as he would force Deku to look at him and say, "How does it feel to be on the other end of this again, Deku? This is where you belong," before then putting his foot on his head, and Deku, looking down, would realize that he needs a way to get out of this, transforming into forearms, as he would throw an uppercut right at the direction of Bakugo's face, with Bakugo tanking it, as it would only leave a scratch mark on his face, with Bakugo saying, "Is that it, Deku?" And Deku in that moment instantly would transform into XLR8. Now you might be wondering, how in the world Deku's capable of just transforming into another and another and another? Well, it's because of the fact that Deku, like I said, was working on an upgrade on his watch where he doesn't exactly gain access to new aliens, but he does gain access to transforming into different aliens for a course of 10 minutes. This would eventually lead Deku to transforming into XLR8 as he would zoom right past Bakugo and get away from him, creating distance as Bakugo would turn to him, wiping his face since he had just had an uppercut landed on him, as he would say, "Come on, Deku, running away? Seriously? I thought we were past that. You didn't even used to do that back when we were in school." As he would blast an explosion in his hand and say, "Remember this?" As Deku, looking down, would look back up at Bakugo and say, "I do," as he would run as fast as he can right by Bakugo, with Bakugo smirking, and Deku running as fast as he possibly could around the block, as eventually he runs right back and would then get ready to throw a punch similar to what the Flash does with his like supersonic punch, and he would land it square on the jaw of Bakugo, which would actually send him crashing through like 11 buildings, as Bakugo would get right back up, blowing a building up entirely, which would actually end up killing all the civilians that were inside of it, with Bakugo saying, "That all you got, Deku?" and shooting to a powerful explosion at the direction of Midoriya, as Deku would tank it, transforming into Diamond Head before then using XLR8 to create a gap between them, jumping up into the air as high as he can, transforming into Cannonball and shooting towards the direction of Bakugo, as Bakugo in that moment would just stand there and just wait for the blow to come. Deku would hit him with the full force Cannonball attack, but Bakugo would only be sent flying back a couple of meters with his feet dug into the ground, as Deku would have realized that this is going to take a lot more than that. He's going to take a heavy hitter. So Deku would transform back into Heat Blast, as he would think to himself that he didn't want to have to take it this far. But then he would begin circling around Bakugo as fast as he possibly could, using his Heat Blast ability, which would eventually end up melting all of Bakugo's clothes off, with Bakugo saying, come on, you useless Deku, let's see what you got." Because remember, he's lost all sense of rationality, so he's not thinking too hard. He just wants to embarrass Deku, and if it means letting Deku land his strongest attack, he's gonna do that. But Deku would spin more and more and more and more and more and more and more, creating this fire vortex supernova tornado thing, which would cause heat to begin eventually actually hurting Bakugo, as he would feel the heat go higher and higher, and Bakugo would then finally shoot explosions saying, "I won't let you do this," but Deku would say, "It's too late," flying circles and circles and circles and circles, flying faster and faster by the second, as All Might in this moment and All For One would be watching this battle as it's taking place, and All For One would decide that he's gonna help his successor out, or not his successor, but his pawn out, as he would try to shoot a quirk towards the direction of Deku, like a water beam at it. But it would be in this moment that Endeavor would actually shoot flames at All For One, which would lead All For One to have to handle Gran Torino, Endeavor, Best Genius, and the likes, right? So what would pretty much go down is Deku continues spiraling and spiraling and spiraling, as eventually Deku would begin yelling out in pain, being like, "Supernova!" with Bakugo beginning to literally be melted as we speak. Like, he's being melted into it, and Deku's going so fast, so unbelievably fast, that it even begins to burn Endeavor. Like, Best Genius is feeling it, All For One is feeling it, All Might is feeling it, and Bakugo's at the center of this, as the flames would eventually engulf Bakugo and burn him to a crisp, leaving Bakugo there as literally like a straight up statue, who with his hand held out, similar to what happened in the Fantastic Four movie. I'm not sure if you guys have seen that, but that's literally what happened to Bakugo. And Deku didn't even want this to happen, but there literally was no other way. Deku couldn't beat him with Diamond Head, he couldn't beat him with Ripjaws, Ghost Freak wasn't gonna be able to land strong enough attacks on Bakugo to damage him, Upgrade wasn't gonna do anything, Forearms clearly wasn't gonna be able to do anything to him, so Deku had no other choice, sorry. He had to take Bakugo out completely. Deku didn't want to, but like I said, he kind of had to. Anyways, that means that Bakugo is completely taken care of, and this would lead only All For One there to be the next one to be taken care of. But Deku in that moment would finally run out of his transformations, and the beep 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 would happen, as All For One would be standing there and say that he's impressed, as from here, he would walk slowly towards the direction of Izuku as he would shoot attacks toward the direction of everybody else around him, with All For One grabbing Deku by the hair and lifting him up, asking him what exactly makes him so strong. Realizing this watch that he has around him probably is the key, as he forcibly tries to yank it off of Deku, but the watch itself would end up exploding, or not exploding, but sending like a blast that would shoot All For One back flying, as Deku, realizing that he now has an opportunity, would grab both of his charged pistols, aiming them towards the direction of All For One as he shoots them, and All For One would, like, since he's mid-air, like since he just like got caught off guard, these two blasts would actually end up hitting All For One, which would actually end up damaging him. As in this moment, All Might would finally end up standing up, having healed as much as he could have from the injuries that he sustained from Bakugo, as now All Might would stand up and he would end up facing off against All For One. This battle would actually end up leading to All Might's death, because all he was able to do is basically hold All For One off long enough for Deku to actually use his Omnitrix once more, transform into Diamond Head, as Deku would shoot out a crystal so large that would basically just trap All For One in it, and since he was so weak, he wasn't going to be able to actually break out, but All For One was still living inside of there, and this would lead All For One to being captured by the authorities, as eventually we would end up getting a cleanup for everything that just took place, and Deku would just sit there literally mourning over Bakugo as well as All Might, because on that same day, he not only lost a teacher in All Might, but he also ended up losing a friend in Bakugo, as much as he hated to admit it. This would end up changing Deku as a character entirely, because now Deku would have learned a lesson not to belittle people. He also would have learned that he shouldn't pay back insult with insult, and he should cherish people while he has them around. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is where I'm going to be ending What If Deku Had the Omnitrix. Now, I don't know if you guys noticed, but Shigaraki is sort of a loose end. So if you guys want me to cover a bonus part to this video where we cover what happens with Shigaraki, Deku handling him, maybe even getting a watch upgrade, who knows, let me know, then hit a like goal of 5,000 likes. But if you guys don't want anything, it's cool, I understand. That said, it has been it for me today, guys. I am so tired. I've been recording this video for such a long time. Peace!